Alaskan wilderness, where ancient pines stand like silent guardians and a single wrong turn can swallow a man forever. A seasoned hunter stumbles upon a sight that stops his heart, a faint, unnatural glow pulsing from the underbrush. He parts the branches, expecting perhaps a lost camper or a poacher's fire, but instead he finds a hidden bunker carved into the earth like a secret wound. And there, in the gathering storm, a small girl in a blue sweater collects treasures in a glass jar, completely unaware that the man watching over her is not her protector, but the reason the world is searching for her. This is the true story-inspired tale of The Bunker in the Blue Light, a gripping narrative of chance, courage, and second chances. Welcome to our channel. Today we sharpen your English listening and vocabulary while exploring one of life's hardest lessons. Sometimes the path that feels like a mistake is exactly the one the universe needs you to walk. Let's begin. In the vast, whispering expanse of interior Alaska, where summer lasts barely 3 months and winter claims everything else, Boaz Mosher had spent 42 years learning the language of the forest. At 50, he still moved like a shadow among shadows, his Carhartt jacket patched in 10 different places, his .30-06 rifle carried not for bravado, but because the wilderness never negotiates. Late August had brought the perfect hunting light, golden, slanted, forgiving, and Boaz had left his cabin at dawn intending to scout moose sign along the upper Tanana tributaries. The air smelled of resin and wet sphagnum. Ravens croaked overhead like old watchmen. He followed game trails the way most people follow sidewalks, reading bent grass and fresh droppings the way a scholar reads footnotes. Vocabulary moment. Sphagnum refers to peat moss, a word borrowed from Greek that appears often in ecology texts and nature documentaries, perfect for describing Alaska's spongy forest floor. But today the forest decided to rewrite the rules. A series of small decisions, following a promising rub line, cutting through a alder thicket to save 20 minutes, gradually pulled him off the mental map he had carried in his head since the Clinton administration. When the first bruise-colored clouds rolled in and the barometric pressure dropped like a stone, Boaz realized he no longer recognized the ridgeline to his left. Idiom alert. Dropped like a stone means a sudden, heavy fall, used both literally, barometers, and figuratively, moods, stocks, hopes. He checked his compass, but thick canopy and magnetic deviation from nearby iron deposits made the needle unreliable. No cell signal, no panic yet, just the slow burn of professional embarrassment. A former Alaska Department of Fish and Game ranger doesn't get lost. He becomes temporarily, locationally challenged. Then came the light. Not sunlight. Not firelight. A soft, steady amber glow leaking between spruce boughs 50 yards downslope. Boaz crouched instinctively, rifle muzzle lowered but ready. In 3 decades of backcountry work, he had seen illegal stills, marijuana grows, meth labs, even an abandoned Soviet-era radio shack once used by Cold War listening posts. True historical fact, during the 1950s, 70s, both superpowers maintained covert listening stations across Alaska's borderlands. But this glow felt different, domestic, almost tender. He glassed the area with binoculars. A low mound, too symmetrical to be natural. A ventilation pipe disguised as a stump. Fresh child-sized footprints pressed into damp duff, leading toward a tiny clearing. And there she was, a girl no older than 9, kneeling beside wild blueberries, carefully placing a shiny piece of mica into a mason jar. Blue sweater. Jeans 2 sizes too big, rolled at the cuffs. Hair the color of wet cedar bark. She hummed softly, unafraid. Boaz's throat tightened. 40 years earlier, he had done exactly the same thing beside his own father on the Kenai Peninsula, filling coffee cans with agates and fool's gold while mosquitoes sang in his ears. The memory hit like wood smoke in winter. Before he could decide whether to call out, heavy boots crunched behind the mound. A man emerged, 40-ish, military posture, eyes sweeping 360 degrees like a sentry. "Rayleigh," he called, voice low but firm. "Time to come in." She ignored him, intent on a ladybug crawling across her palm. The man sighed, walked over, crouched, whispered, Only then did lightning split the sky and thunder roll like artillery. In that flash, the man's gaze locked onto Boaz's position. Recognition. Suspicion. Protective fury. He scooped the child and vanished into the earth. Boaz stayed frozen until the entrance hatch closed with a metallic clunk. Philosophical reflection. The forest does not care about our plans, our pride, or our age. It simply reveals what we need to see when we are ready to see it. Modern English tie-in. Notice how locked onto, military term for target acquisition, has entered everyday speech to mean sudden, intense focus, his eyes locked onto the problem. Question for you. When was the last time life forced you off your planned path and later you realized the detour was the real destination? Rain arrived in curtains as Boaz retraced his steps using dead reckoning and the memory of one distinctive lightning-struck cedar. By the time he reached his F-150, the storm had turned biblical, horizontal wind, pea-sized hail, wipers useless. He drove home in silence, heater blasting, mind replaying the scene on permanent loop. Rose met him at the door with a towel and worry lines etched deeper than usual. 57 years of marriage had taught her to read his face the way he read animal sign. "You're 4 hours late and empty-handed," she said. "That's not like you." Over rabbit stew, the few snowshoe hairs he'd taken earlier. Boaz told her everything, the unintended detour, the bunker, the child collecting treasures, the man's guarded eyes, the name Rayleigh. Rose listened without interrupting, then rose and retrieved last month's Fairbanks Daily News Miner from the stack beside the wood stove. She opened to page A3 and slid the paper across the table. Headline: Amber Alert. 8-year-old Rayleigh Winston still missing after 22 days. School photo beneath it. Same blue sweater. Same trusting smile. Same first name. Boaz felt the room tilt. "It's her," he whispered. Rose was already dialing the Alaska State Troopers' non-emergency line. 37 minutes later, Sergeant Thompson and Deputy Garcia sat dripping in their living room, notebooks open. Boaz recounted every detail again, handed over the hand-drawn map the man had given him, marked the approximate coordinates using his old USGS topo quad. Thompson studied him carefully. "You're sure about the name?" He called her twice. "Rayleigh. Not Riley Rayleigh." The sergeant exchanged glances with his partner. Biological father, Raymond Winston. Lost custody after the mother died in a car accident outside Delta Junction. Grandmother Margaret Winston had guardianship. 3 weeks ago, Raymond showed up at the grandmother's house while Margaret was in the ICU with pneumonia. Neighbors saw him load Rayleigh into his Jeep. No one's seen either of them since. Historical parallel. In 1994, Alaska experienced its own high-profile parental abduction case when a Fairbanks father took his 2 daughters to a remote cabin near Chicken. Searchers found them after 11 days because a bush pilot noticed fresh snowmobile tracks in a closed area, proof that even in Alaska's enormity, small signs can lead to salvation. Thompson stood. "We're staging at Pine Creek Trailhead at 0300. Weather supposed to break around 0500. Mr. Mosher, we'd like you to guide the entry team." Boaz didn't hesitate. Rose squeezed his hand under the table, permission and warning in one gesture. At 4:47 a.m., a convoy rolled out under clearing skies. Boaz rode shotgun with Thompson, pointing out landmarks only a man who had walked those ridges for decades would know. The helicopter lifted off, thermal cameras sweeping. Ground teams moved in pincer formation. At 6:12 a.m., Air 1 reported a single heat signature inside the structure. Small, stationary. At 6:38, the entry team breached. Rayleigh was curled on a sleeping bag, heavily sedated with children's Benadryl, later confirmed by toxicology, clutching her treasure jar. No resistance. Raymond Winston was gone. Had been gone for hours. Philosophical teaching. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move toward what frightens you anyway. English learning note. Pincer formation, from military strategy, is now used metaphorically. The reporters moved in a pincer formation around the politician. Modern relevance. In an age of Amber Alerts pinging every smartphone, we sometimes forget that analog skills, tracking, observation, memory, still solve cases machines cannot. Thought to carry with you. When fear tells you to turn back, ask yourself, what child, literal or metaphorical, might be waiting for you to keep going? Dawn painted the eastern sky rose gold as troopers carried Rayleigh down the muddy game trail on a rescue litter. Boaz walked beside her, shining his flashlight on the path, even though morning light had arrived. She stirred once, eyes glassy, and whispered, "My jar." An officer gently placed the mason jar beside her. Ladybugs, mica, one perfect star-shaped aspen leaf. At the trailhead, medics took over. Rose waited in the command SUV with hot chocolate and a spare blanket. When they transferred Rayleigh to the ambulance, she looked straight at Rose and asked in the smallest voice, "Are you the grandma?" Rose's eyes filled. "Not yet, sweetheart. But I'd like to be your friend." By 9 a.m. Raymond Winston remained at large. Boaz and Rose gave formal statements at the Palmer Post, then drove home in exhausted silence. They slept 3 hours. At 2:17 p.m. the phone rang. "Sergeant Thompson. We have him. Showed up at your cabin around 4 a.m. Apparently wanted the map back, or wanted to make sure you couldn't lead us there again." Boaz felt ice slide down his spine. He came armed, 9mm Glock. "Fired once inside your living room. You engaged. Grazed your arm. You returned fire, hit him in the thigh. Pursuit into the timber. You tracked him by starlight and blood trail. Officers arrived 30 seconds after your second shot. He's in custody, stable, already asking for a lawyer." Boaz touched the fresh bandage on his forearm. "And Rayleigh? She's at Matsu Regional being evaluated. CPS has temporary emergency custody. Grandmother Margaret is still critical, but improving. No other close relatives." A long pause. "Boaz, the girl asked about you, and Rose by name. Said the man in the woods with the big flashlight was nice. Said the lady with silver hair looked kind." Rose, listening on speaker, began to cry quietly. That evening they sat on the porch, watching alpenglow fade from the Chugach peaks. Rose spoke first. "We're too old to start over." "We're not starting over," Boaz answered. "We're extending." They called CPS the next morning. 3 weeks later, after background checks, home visits, parenting classes, and heart-to-heart talks with a very cautious but curious little girl, they signed temporary guardianship papers. Rayleigh moved into Michael's old bedroom. The first night, she placed her treasure jar on the windowsill so the moonlight could touch the mica. Philosophical core. Family is not only born, it is chosen, built, earned through quiet acts of showing up. English idiom spotlight. Showed up equals arrived and was present when it mattered most, increasingly used in motivational speeches. You just have to show up. Historical echo. During the 1920s, 30s Dust Bowl migration, thousands of orphaned or abandoned children were informally adopted by strangers along Route 66, acts of radical kindness later studied by sociologists as examples of fictive kin networks. Modern connection. Today's foster system in the U.S. cares for over 400,000 children. Many wait years for permanence. One small decision to open a door can rewrite generations. Reflection. Who in your life right now is waiting for someone to show up, not with grand gestures, but with steady, ordinary love? Years later, the cabin smelled of cedar smoke, oatmeal, and watercolor paint. Rayleigh, now 12, sat cross-legged on the rug sketching ravens while Rose read aloud from my side of the mountain. Boaz cleaned his rifle at the kitchen table, listening. Margaret Winston had passed peacefully 18 months after the rescue, leaving behind a letter that thanked Boaz and Rose for giving my heart back its heartbeat. Rayleigh called them Papa Bo and Nana Rose within 6 weeks and never stopped. She still collected treasures, now in shadow boxes hung on the wall. Beetle wings, fossil ferns, one tiny moose tooth she found near the old bunker site, which the Forest Service raised after the trial. Raymond Winston received 28 years. He writes one letter each Christmas asking for forgiveness he has not yet earned. Rayleigh reads them, thinks, then puts them away. She does not hate him. She simply chooses peace. At school, she leads the Wilderness Safety Club, teaching younger kids how to use a compass, how to recognize the sound of a stressed spruce before it falls, how to tell direction by moss growth, heavier on the north side in the northern hemisphere. Her English essays, sharp, vivid, occasionally heartbreaking, have won regional awards. One begins. Sometimes getting lost is the only way to be found. Vocabulary builder. Razed means completely demolished, from Old French razor equals to scrape, used for buildings, forests, reputations. Idiom deep dive. Turn over a new leaf equals start fresh. Rayleigh literally turned over thousands of leaves looking for perfect ones. Universal wisdom. Trauma does not define the end of a story. It marks the beginning of a different one. Modern relevance. In our hyper-connected world, we forget that real rescue often happens offline, person to person, hand to hand. English learners take note. Narrative past perfect, had been gone. Shows completed action before another past action, crucial for storytelling depth. Final thought to carry into your week. Every life contains at least one moment when the path forks, and you must decide whether to follow fear back to safety or curiosity forward into the unknown. Which path are you choosing today, and who might be waiting at the end of it? The Alaskan sky holds more stars than most people ever count. On clear winter nights, Rayleigh and Boaz still sit on the porch wrapped in wool blankets, pointing out constellations she has renamed. The Treasure Jar, Pleiades, Papa's Compass, Big Dipper, Nana's Raven, Cassiopeia. Rose joins them when her arthritis allows, bringing cocoa and stories of Michael's latest engineering project in Anchorage. The cabin has one more bedroom now, ready if another child ever needs it. Rayleigh wants to be a wildlife biologist or perhaps a search and rescue pilot. She hasn't decided. What she has decided is that fear ends where love begins. She keeps one photograph on her desk, herself at 8, standing between Boaz and Rose on the day the adoption became final, all three smiling so wide their eyes disappear. Behind them the forest stretches forever. Beautiful, dangerous, honest. Philosophical capstone. The Japanese concept of kintsugi teaches that broken things become more beautiful when mended with gold. Rayleigh's life was broken. Boaz and Rose helped mend it, not perfectly, but with steady golden kindness. English learning takeaway. Study compound complex sentences in this script. They mirror real thought patterns and make advanced speaking and writing feel natural. Final message. You do not need to be young, strong, or fearless to change a life. You only need to be willing to get lost, and then refuse to stay lost alone. So ask yourself tonight, under whatever sky you sleep beneath, who is waiting for your light in the dark, and are you brave enough to let yourself get lost long enough to find them?